Hi Guille, how are you? You know you're one of my favorite students, so I'm going to record this video for you to improve your writing skills. I have your latest independent task right in front of me, so I'm going to show you how I read it and how I mark it, and then I will probably give you my overall assessment in terms of all of the criteria that TOEFL will use to evaluate your writing. Okay? Well, as you can see, I have highlighted certain words in yellow. Obviously, these words contain certain mistakes. For example, let's begin with the first sentence. I disagree with the idea that it is better to invest government money in artistic projects than in environment ones. Well, first mistake is we need not use the capital letter in front of artistic, for artistic. We capitalize art when it is the name of a subject. Other than that, we don't need any capitalization. And then, just as you say, artistic projects, and artistic is an adjective, you should have another adjective here. Let's make this bigger so that we can see better. What would be the adjective for environment? Environmental, of course. Okay? There are several reasons why I is always capitalized, and an old error of yours, with. How do you spell with? This is a word we need to begin spelling correctly, because if you insist on making this spelling mistake, you will never eliminate it from your writing. So with, remember, W-I-T-H. So you say, in the following, I will state my opinion about it. In the following what? In the following lines, in the following paragraphs, or simply in this essay. And then I wouldn't say I will state my opinion about it, because you've already stated your opinion. In saying, I disagree with the idea, blah, 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 you are already stating your point of view. So what you'll do in the remaining part of the essay is to support your opinion with arguments, right? So instead of I will state my opinion about it, you could say I will develop the main arguments to support my opinion, or something like that, all right? So I will develop the main arguments to support my opinion, or I will develop a series of arguments, I like it better, a series of arguments to support my opinion. So one thing is to state an opinion, and quite another is to develop arguments or to support an opinion, right? You state by simply mentioning what is your position. When you say I agree or I disagree, that's it. You've already stated it. Okay, to start with, into environmental, once again we need an adjective. Or the preservation of natural areas is a really powerful economic source. Well, the investment is, first of all, I think you mean to say resource, recurso, right? An economic resource. And when you invest in something, the investment is not the resource itself. Maybe you could say creates a really powerful economic resource. Okay, or in any other way that you can improve that expression. Wait a minute here. Again, we have agreement trouble. Preserve natural areas, attract many tourists, all right? And then when you talk about origin, as for example, the place where people come from, there you have it. The preposition is from different parts of the world. Remember that we asked the question, where are you from? And that from means origin, okay? Okay, environmental issues. Once again, you need the adjective. The impact, both impacts and the earth require the preposition on, not in, right? So whether you refer to the impact of human actions on the earth, or whether you refer to actions that take place on the earth, in both cases the correct preposition would be on. Ambience is not really used in English. Environment, I understand your intention, and it's a very good intention not to repeat words you have been using. So how about saying things like, saying something like ecological projects, right? Ecological projects, not ambience, okay? Good. Finally, human lives depend. Okay, first of all, if it were plural, lives would be spelled with V, all right? So human lives depend. But in general, when one talks about these issues, we don't generalize because it's all human life, life in general for the whole of humanity. So the singular is preferable. And in this case then, because it's singular, we need to add an S to the verb. So human life depends on the environment. Without fertile lands, water or trees, well, here we need like to make a pause when we speak, so a comma is best. Humanity, well, first of all, the problem here with isn't is that we cannot use contractions, these sort of abbreviated forms in English, because they are not formal. When we write, we should use full forms for verbs, no contracted forms. And I would say, since you're making a prediction for the future, this is not really happening. Humanity, I would say something like, will not be able to survive. All right, in English, we have to be very what happened here? Humanity will not be, able to survive. Well, something happened here and I have to go back. Right, so this is the part that I need to remove, and humanity will not be able to survive. I was saying that in English we have to be very, very careful with the time reference of our tenses. In this respect, English is very logical. We cannot refer to this action in the present because it's not happening right now. It's something that we are predicting for the future. Therefore, we'll need to use will. All right, Earth is indispensable for every living. Another agreement issue. You know, every in English is always singular. Everybody is, everything is, everyone has, etc. So every living being without the S, right? Because it means as one living being, each one. A spelling problem here with the word responsible. Society is responsible. Notice how we spell it, right? Not like the Spanish word, responsible for taking care of it. Okay, all things considered, it's impossible, double S. 2, remember we once mentioned this, the word negate does not exist in English. We say to deny. All the benefits that preserve into the environment brings for the, I don't know what you mean here, probably increase, but a community doesn't increase. A community can be benefited, so brings for the benefit would be the right word of the community. Okay? Good. Well, this is it. Let me now remove all these colors so that we are not confused or distracted by the highlighting. This is your edited text. Now, in formal prose, or in academic writing, to improve the layout of your text, you can do two things. You can indent your paragraphs. Indentation is the word for sangria in Spanish. So you can indent your paragraphs by going to Sangria, indentation and space, and choosing first line. And there you have all the paragraphs are neatly indented in this left margin here, right? Another possibility, if you don't like to use indentation, is to separate paragraphs without any indentation, but in that case you have to leave one line in between, all right, every paragraph, separating the paragraphs. So whether you choose this format or the previous one, it's something that you need to do to start making your your paragraphs and your text look more neatly presented. Okay, I prefer indentation myself, so this is what I'm going to do right now. So leaving the same spacing, but indenting each and every paragraph. So this is your final text with the most obvious surface mistakes having been removed. Now, there's something else that we need to check, and for that reason, I made some comments before actually starting to record the video, but I didn't want to show all these comments together with the highlighted words, not to create sort of a visual contamination. So, the first problem we have, and it's a serious matter that we have to resolve, here is the comment. Let's see what I wrote. Oops, that's too big. Let's come back to the original size. There we have. Here, when we use verbs to refer to actions that are carried out and such actions are the subject of your sentence, we need to nominalize these verbs. That is to say, we need to transform them into nouns. One way of doing this is by means of an ing form. So rather than saying invest into environmental project, or the preservation of projects, actually, I think there was a missing S there, or the preservation of natural areas. So investment in could be one alternative. Investment in environmental projects or the preservation. Why did I choose investment and not investing, for example? Well, for the sake of parallelism, because in the same sentence you have or the preservation, which is another noun. So if here I say investing in environmental projects, I would then have to say or preserving, right? So in one way or another, you need to nominalize these actions. Do not just use the finite verb, okay? Good. All right, let's move on to the second comment. It says, your sentence reads, preserved natural areas attract many tourists from different parts of the world, making for defect increased national economy. I guess you were trying to say, logrando tal cosa por defecto, as we would say in Spanish. Okay, this is what I wrote here in the comment. This is perhaps a phrase you thought in Spanish and translated more or less automatically into English. The idiomatic way of expressing this idea would be thus contributing by default to economic growth or economic expansion. Shall we write it? Thus contributing by default, there's a U missing, thus contributing by default to economic growth or economic expansion, or any other phrase that suggests that the economy is growing rather than increasing, which is the term that you used. Okay? So I guess we can remove this comment now that you have understood the correction. So we remove the part that was wrong. Okay, so why thus? Thus contributing. This is frequently used in English to indicate something like in this way, by means of this action, it will contribute to economic growth. Okay, and it's used on an ing form. Thus contributing. The expression then that you were in need of is by default, okay, to economic growth. We move on to the last sentence in this paragraph, and we have the same thing, right? put money into ecological projects. Again, this is the subject of the action, because it says that not only shows what is the subject. Well, the action of putting money. So again, we need to nominalize this by transforming the verb into a noun or using the ing form. Maybe the best way is to say investing money or resources in ecological projects. No comma here, because we don't use commas to separate subjects from the verbs, unless there are special cases with phrases interrupting the normal order. But as a rule, we don't separate. If they are together, as they are here, subject and predicate, no comma goes in between. And then you say, not only shows interest from the state, but also it is causing up to the community. I would say it is a way of causing up to the community. Una manera de. It is a way of causing up to the community. All right? Okay, well, I guess this is just a minor improvement, so I will not highlight it. And finally, the same thing again. It is, oh, I skipped this correction. It is impossible to deny all the benefits that, again, preserving and investing in the environment brings for the benefit of the community, because preserving and investing are the subjects of the verb to bring. What is it that will bring benefit to the community? Well, preserving, yes, and investing, right, in the environment. So it's a good thing that you made the same mistake 3 times. So in this, I mean, it's not a good thing to make mistakes at all, but when we make mistakes, you know, and they are all crowded together here, this shows that this is an important area of improvement and a rule that we need to remember, okay? So this is how the final text, what the final text looks like. Then you can remove these pink marks once you have learned and internalized the rules that the corrections required or the corrections involved. All right, so what can we say as a general feedback, let's say? Well, I would say if I had to assess this text, I would say in terms of giving you my general feedback, I would say the good points about the text are the good quality content. This is something that is consistent with you. You have very good arguments, and they are generally well supported, both in your speaking and in your writing. You organize the arguments very easily and quickly, and the development is correct because you say enough about each of the arguments. Some grammar tips to remember. Sorry, I wanted to make the text smaller so that we would have the complete text on the screen. Grammar tips to remember. Okay, here we are. Verbs which are used to express an action, especially in subject position, right, require, what do they require? They require nominalization, for example, through an ing form. I didn't write for example, and I think it's necessary because there are other ways of nominalizing a verb. You can simply write a noun, as we did in one of the corrections, the investment. Okay? So verbs which are used to express an action, to name the action, and especially in a subject position. This is very important, that's why I'm highlighting it, because you made a recurrent mistake 3 times in the same text. Okay, another tip to remember is that you have to use adjectives in front of nouns, of course. Environmental concerns as opposed to environment concerns. And a style tip to remember, this has to do with the style in which we write. Since this is formal, academic style, we do not use contractions. mistakes which have become consistent and should be eliminated immediately. And I say immediately because the risk is that the more you delay removal of these mistakes, the more fixed they become in your productions. So as soon as possible, please, let's begin spelling with correctly, and let's start checking all the verbs we use to see if the agreement is correct, because we have consistently made corrections in this field, either missing an S or adding an S where it is not necessary. And finally, this sort of Spanish interference with certain words that do not exist in English, or if they exist, they are not in current usage anymore, or they are reserved to certain contexts. So one of them is to deny, negar, to deny. All right. Well, that's all for now. This is my feedback, and this is your final edited text. Bye bye.